The laughter erupted like a sudden thunderstorm, harsh and unrelenting. Noah Sullivan stood frozen in the middle of the school hallway, his worn backpack lying at his feet, its aged zipper finally surrendering after months of faithful service. His meager lunch, a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in reused foil and a bruised apple, lay exposed on the polished floor alongside his second-hand textbooks and the pencil case his mother had found at a garage sale. The clock on the wall ticked methodically, each sound hammering Noah's humiliation deeper as Westridge Academy's elite circled like well-dressed vultures. "Dumpster dive for lunch again, Sullivan?" Garrett Phillips smirked, his designer sneakers deliberately stepping inches from Noah's scattered belongings. The senior's voice carried the casual cruelty of someone who had never known want, someone whose family name adorned one of the school's science buildings. Noah knelt to gather his things, his fingers trembling slightly. 15 years old and already well-versed in the art of becoming invisible, he kept his eyes downcast as he collected his dignity piece by piece. The ticking of the hallway clock seemed to grow louder, marking seconds that stretched into eternity. His faded jeans, washed so many times they'd gone soft at the knees, betrayed him further by exposing a small tear as he crouched. "Nice threads," Madison Harper added, her perfectly manicured hand covering a rehearsed giggle. "Vintage chic as so last season." The word stung, but Noah had developed calluses on his pride over the years. His mother worked double shifts at Mercy Hospital to afford his scholarship's remaining fees, coming home with the antiseptic smell of hospital corridors embedded in her scrubs. He thought of her now. How her eyes crinkled when she smiled despite her exhaustion, how she'd squeezed his shoulder this morning and whispered, "Head up, heart open," before he'd left for school. The memory straightened his spine as he stood, clutching his damaged backpack to his chest. The bell rang, dispersing his tormentors to their respective classrooms. Noah remained for a moment, alone in the sudden quiet, listening to the steady tick-tock of the clock above. He slipped his hand into his pocket, fingers finding the small wooden cross his grandfather had carved before passing away last winter. The worn edges of the simple crucifix were smooth against his skin, a tactile prayer in his palm. The late bell jarred him into motion. Noah hurried toward his history class, sliding into his seat just as Mr. Harrington began discussing the Great Depression. The irony wasn't lost on him as he arranged his salvage supplies on the desk, trying to appear as though he belonged in this prestigious academy where most students arrived in vehicles worth more than his mother's annual salary. It was during lunch period that Noah first noticed the new boy. Sitting alone at the far end of the cafeteria, his dark eyes downcast, the boy methodically arranged and rearranged his food without eating. Something in his solitude resonated with Noah, who recognized the particular set of shoulders that carried the weight of being an outsider. According to whispered rumors, he was a refugee from Afghanistan, son of a former interpreter for American forces, and had arrived at Westridge on some special scholarship program for displaced families. Noah observed from his own isolated corner as Garrett and his entourage approached the new students' table. The clock on the cafeteria wall ticked steadily as Noah watched the familiar choreography of intimidation unfold, the casual invasion of personal space, the exaggerated examination of the boy's lunch, the questions asked too loudly and too slowly, as if volume could bridge a language barrier. The new boy's expression remained carefully neutral, but Noah caught the slight tremor in his hands as he clutched his tray. A quiet voice inside Noah urged him to intervene, to stand and cross the room, to become the ally he himself had always longed for. But another voice, equally insistent, reminded him of his precarious position at Westridge. His mother had sacrificed too much for him to jeopardize his place here. He was surviving by remaining invisible. Drawing attention would only make him a larger target. The ticking of the clock seemed to grow louder, a metronome keeping time with Noah's racing thoughts. His fingers found the wooden cross in his pocket again, tracing its contours as he weighed his options. His grandfather's voice seemed to whisper from the carved wood. "Courage isn't about being fearless, Noah. It's about doing what's right, despite your fear." Before he could reconsider, Noah stood, gathered his lunch, and walked across the cafeteria. The distance seemed to stretch with each step, the eyes of other students turning to track his unusual movement across established social boundaries. He stopped at the edge of the new boys' table, heart pounding in rhythm with the ticking clock. "Mind if I sit here?" Noah asked, his voice mercifully steady. The boy looked up, surprise flickering across his features, before he nodded once, a cautious gesture that spoke volumes. "I'm Noah," he offered, sliding onto the bench. "Rafi," the boy replied after a moment, his accent wrapping around the simple syllables. "Rafi Ahmadi." Garrett's group had retreated at Noah's approach, but their attention remained fixed on this unexpected development, their expressions promising future consequences. Noah felt their stares, but focused instead on Rafi, who had resumed rearranging his untouched food. "The meatloaf is pretty questionable," Noah said conversationally, "but the apple crisp is decent." A ghost of a smile touched Rafi's lips. "In my country, we say food is memory made visible." He gestured toward his tray. "I do not recognize my memories here." The simple poetry of Rafi's words caught Noah off guard. There was a depth to this boy that made Noah's own troubles seem suddenly smaller. As they sat in companionable silence, the cafeteria clock continued its steady rhythm, but its ticking no longer seemed to mock Noah's isolation. After school, Noah found Rafi struggling with his locker combination, frustration evident in the tense line of his shoulders. Noah approached and quietly offered assistance, demonstrating the particular lift and twist the temperamental locks required. As Rafi finally opened his locker, his books slipped from his grasp, scattering across the floor. Noah immediately knelt to help gather them, acutely aware of the parallel to his own humiliation that morning. As they collected the fallen items, the small wooden cross fell from Noah's pocket, landing between them on the polished floor. Rafi paused, his gaze fixed on the simple carving. Noah quickly retrieved it, embarrassment heating his face, but not before noticing the recognition in Rafi's eyes. "My grandfather made it," Noah explained, tucking the cross back into his pocket. "Before he died." Rafi nodded, a respect in his expression that required no elaboration. "In my culture, we also keep tokens of those we have lost. Objects carry memories that words cannot hold." Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of shared humanity that transcended their different backgrounds. As they walked out of school together, the afternoon sunlight cast long shadows behind them, their disparate silhouettes merging on the pavement. The announcement of the upcoming field trip to Westbrook Mall came 2 weeks later. Mrs. Tanner, the sophomore English teacher, distributed permission slips with instructions about the marketing analysis project they would complete while there. The excitement was palpable among the students, less for the educational content than for the relative freedom a mall excursion promised. Noah noticed Rafi's confusion as Mrs. Tanner explained the assignment. Though Rafi's English had improved during their growing friendship, the cultural context of an American shopping mall clearly eluded him. After class, Noah explained the concept as best he could, describing the massive indoor space with its dozens of stores, food court and central plaza. "It's like a bazaar," Rafi ventured, searching for equivalents. "Sort of, but all indoors with escalators and air conditioning," Noah replied. "And with a lot more overpriced stuff nobody really needs." As they parted ways, Noah overheard Garrett speaking with Madison and Tyler Jenkins near the water fountain, their voices deliberately pitched to carry. "It'll be perfect," Garrett was saying. "The mall's huge. Once we ditch him, he'll be completely lost, probably start crying for his Taliban buddies." Madison's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "We should film it. Imagine the views online." The cruel plotting froze Noah in place, the hallway clocks ticking suddenly thunderous in his ears. He should walk away, pretend he hadn't heard. Getting involved would only make him a target too. But the wooden cross in his pocket seemed to grow heavier, his grandfather's voice echoing in his memory. Sometimes standing by is the same as standing against. The decision that formed in Noah's mind wasn't heroic or dramatic. He would simply keep an eye on Raffi during the trip, make sure he didn't get separated from the group. No confrontation necessary, just quiet vigilance. Noah's fingers traced the edges of the cross, a habit that had become almost unconscious. The worn wood was smooth against his skin, familiar and reassuring. The day of the field trip arrived with autumn sunshine that belied the anxiety churning in Noah's stomach. The sophomore class gathered in the school parking lot, clustering around the 2 yellow buses that would transport them to Westbrook Mall. Noah spotted Raffi standing slightly apart from the others, his second-hand coat, clearly a donation, hanging loosely on his slender frame. The coat's oversized dimensions made Raffi look younger than his 13 years, vulnerable in a way that sharpened Noah's resolve. On the bus, Noah maneuvered to sit near Raffi, close enough to keep watch, but not so obviously aligned that they'd become a unified target. Garrett and his friends occupied the rear seats, their animated conversation punctuated by bursts of laughter that raised Noah's hackles. The bus engine's rumble provided a different rhythm from the school clocks, but Noah found himself mentally counting seconds anyway, measuring time against his mounting apprehension. Westbrook Mall rose like a glass and steel monument to consumerism, its vast parking lot already filling with weekday shoppers. Mrs. Tanner gathered the students at the main entrance, reviewing the assignment requirements and establishing the meeting time and location for their return. Noah listened with half an ear, his attention divided between the teacher's instructions and Garrett's group, who were exchanging meaningful glances and subtle nods. "You have 3 hours, Mrs. Tanner concluded. "Stay in groups of at least 3, complete your marketing analysis worksheets, and meet back here at the north entrance at exactly 2 o'clock. Any questions?" The students dispersed like mercury, flowing in various directions into the mall's cavernous interior. Noah hesitated, watching as Garrett, Madison, and Tyler approached Raffi with unexpected friendliness, offering to include him in their group. Raffi's surprise and cautious pleasure were evident in his expression, and Noah felt a twist of uncertainty. Perhaps he had misinterpreted their conversation. Perhaps they had reconsidered their cruelty. But the calculated gleam in Garrett's eye as he glanced back at Noah told a different story. Noah followed at a distance as the group moved deeper into the mall, weaving through the weekday shoppers. The mall's interior stretched in multiple directions, a labyrinth of storefronts, kiosks, and intersecting corridors. Overhead, speakers played generic music, but Noah could swear he heard a ticking sound beneath the commercial melodies, as if the universe itself was counting down to something inevitable. For nearly an hour, Noah trailed the group, keeping them in sight while maintaining his distance. They visited several stores, Garrett making a show of explaining American shopping customs to Raffi, who nodded with genuine interest, unaware of the performance being staged for his benefit. Noah completed his worksheet mechanically, his pencil moving across the paper while his attention remained fixed on the unfolding drama. His vigilance wavered only once when he stopped to help an elderly woman who had dropped her shopping bag, spilling its contents across the tile floor. By the time he'd retrieved her scattered purchases, Garrett's group had vanished from view. Panic fluttered in Noah's chest as he scanned the crowded corridor, searching for Raffi's oversized coat or Garrett's distinctive swagger. Noah moved quickly through the mall, checking each store and side passage. The vast space seemed to expand with his growing anxiety, the overhead lighting suddenly too bright, the piped-in music too loud. He checked his phone to call Mrs. Tanner, only to find the battery dead. He'd forgotten to charge it the night before, another consequence of his family's hectic schedule and shared electronics. After 15 minutes of increasingly desperate searching, Noah heard a commotion near the central fountain. Following the sound, he found a small crowd gathered in a loose circle. Pushing through, Noah's heart sank at the sight before him. Raffi lay on the polished floor, his body racked with what appeared to be a seizure, his eyes rolled back and limbs rigid. A mall security guard was kneeling beside him, speaking into his radio while trying to keep curious onlookers at bay. Noah rushed forward, dropping to his knees beside Raffi. The security guard began to wave him back, but Noah's urgent explanation, "He's my classmate, we're on a field trip," earned him a position at Raffi's side. Up close, Noah could see that what had appeared to be a seizure was something different. Raffi's breathing came in short, desperate gasps, his fingers clawing at his chest as though fighting for air. "It's a panic attack," Noah realized aloud, remembering his mother's descriptions of patients she'd treated. "He needs space and calm." The security guard looked skeptical but moved back slightly, continuing to radio for medical assistance. Noah leaned closer to Raffi, speaking in a low, steady voice. "Raffi, it's Noah. You're safe. You're at the mall, remember? We're on a field trip for Mrs. Tanner's class. I need you to try to breathe with me, okay? In through your nose, out through your mouth." Raffi's eyes found Noah's, terror evident in their depths. Noah continued his gentle coaching, demonstrating the breathing pattern while maintaining eye contact. Distantly, he was aware of phones being raised around them, recording the scene, but he focused entirely on Raffi, whose gasping gradually began to slow. When Raffi's breathing had somewhat stabilized, Noah helped him to a sitting position, supporting his back. Raffi's face was ashen, embarrassment now mixing with the residual panic. "They left me," he whispered, his accent thickened by emotion. "I turned and they were gone. So many people, so many corridors, like Kabul Market when the bombing started." The final piece clicked into place for Noah. Raffi wasn't just lost. He'd been triggered into a traumatic memory. Noah's hand went to his pocket, fingers closing around the wooden cross. He pulled it out, holding it tightly as though it could somehow transmit strength. "Poor boy helped immigrant classmate." Madison's voice cut through the moment, reading aloud as she typed on her phone. "Got your headline for the school paper, Sullivan?" Her tone was light, amused, as though she hadn't been party to creating the situation. Behind her, Tyler was still filming, while Garrett watched with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. The mall clock above the fountain showed just past 1:30. Noah realized with a sinking feeling that he and Raffi were now effectively stranded until the meeting time. His dead phone meant no communication with Mrs. Tanner, and Raffi was clearly in no condition to navigate the mall's complex layout. The security guard, returning from his radio conversation, informed them that a first aid attendant was on the way. "Where's your teacher, boys?" he asked, his tone suggesting this wasn't his first experience with school groups gone awry. "We got separated," Noah explained, omitting the deliberate nature of the separation. "We're supposed to meet at the north entrance at 2:00. The guard nodded, making a note on his clipboard. "We'll get your friend checked out and then escort you both there." Garrett's group had drifted away, their entertainment value extracted from the situation, but Noah knew the incident was far from over. The phones had ensured that. As he sat beside Raffi, waiting for the first aid attendant, Noah found himself absently running his thumb over the surface of the wooden cross, its familiar contours grounding him amid the chaos. The fallout began the next morning. Noah entered Westridge Academy to find the hallways humming with a particular energy he recognized from previous social earthquakes. Phones appeared as he passed, screens tilted away, but not before he caught glimpses of familiar images. Raffi on the mall floor, Noah kneeling beside him. By third period, the narrative had crystallized. Video clips, edited and captioned, circulated through social media channels and messaging apps, each iteration more distorted than the last. Raffi's panic attack had been transformed into a melodramatic breakdown. Noah's assistance portrayed as awkward, overreaching intervention. Some versions included slow-motion replays of Noah's most earnest expressions, overlaid with ironic music or mocking commentary. The worst came at lunch. Noah entered the cafeteria to find Garrett holding court at the central table, his phone connected to a portable speaker. As Noah walked in, Garrett pressed play on a remixed version of the mall incident, this one featuring zoomed-in footage of Noah pulling out his grandfather's cross. "Look at St. Sullivan," Garrett announced to appreciative laughter, "trying to exorcise the demon of poor English skills." The cafeteria clock ticked relentlessly as Noah stood frozen, waves of humiliation washing over him. The wooden cross felt suddenly heavy in his pocket, a weight dragging him down rather than buoying him up. For the first time since his grandfather's death, Noah found himself questioning the simple faith that had sustained him through difficult times. Rafi was absent, his empty place in the cafeteria a silent accusation. Noah had texted him that morning, one of the rare communications his family's shared phone plan allowed, but had received no response. The thought that Rafi might be suffering alone, bearing the dual burden of public mockery and triggered trauma, sat like a stone in Noah's stomach. The next few days unfolded with brutal predictability. The videos continued to circulate, spawning memes and in-jokes that rippled through the student body. Noah found crude crosses drawn on his locker, his textbooks, even scrawled on his desk in washable marker. In the restroom, he overheard two freshmen giggling about "Poor Boy and the Mall Meltdown," the title apparently bestowed upon the most popular edit of the video. Rafi returned to school 3 days after the incident, his presence subdued to the point of near invisibility. He avoided Noah in the hallways, his eyes downcast, shoulders hunched beneath the too large coat that now seemed like armor rather than ill-fitting charity. Noah understood the avoidance. Association with him had become toxic, contaminated by mockery and judgment. The following Tuesday, Noah arrived home to find an unfamiliar car parked outside their modest apartment building. His mother met him at the door, her expression a mixture of concern and something else, respect perhaps. "You have visitors," she said quietly, straightening Noah's collar with gentle fingers. Rafi and his father. Noah entered their small living room to find Rafi perched awkwardly on the edge of their worn sofa, beside a man whose dignified bearing seemed to transform the humble space. Mr. Ahmadi stood as Noah entered, extending a hand in formal greeting. "You are the boy who helped my son," he said, his English careful but fluent. "I have come to thank you properly." Noah shook the offered hand, acutely aware of the apartment's limitations. The water stain on the ceiling that the landlord had promised to fix months ago, the mismatched furniture collected from various second-hand sources, the lingering smell of the previous night's spaghetti dinner. But Mr. Ahmadi's gaze held no judgment, only a deep, assessing intelligence. "Please, sit," Noah's mother encouraged, bringing in a tray with their best cups, the ones without chips, filled with tea. Noah noticed her hands trembling slightly, the extra shift she'd worked the night before, evident in the shadows beneath her eyes. They sat in an awkward circle, the adults making careful conversation, while Noah and Rafi exchanged glances laden with unspoken meaning. The wall clock, a garage sale find with a slightly irregular tick, counted seconds that stretched into minutes. Finally, Mr. Ahmadi turned his full attention to Noah. "My son has told me everything," he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had witnessed far worse than high school cruelty. "About the trip, about the students who abandoned him, about your kindness." Noah shifted uncomfortably under the man's intense gaze. "I didn't really do anything," he mumbled. "I should have stayed closer, should have prevented it." Mr. Ahmadi shook his head once, decisively. "In my country, I served as interpreter for American forces. I saw men with weapons and body armor who could not prevent tragedy. You are a boy who had only courage and compassion, yet you did what many grown men fail to do. You showed mercy without calculation." The words settled over Noah like a mantle, unexpected and somehow transformative. Mr. Ahmadi reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object wrapped in cloth. "In our tradition, we believe that kindness must be acknowledged, that mercy creates a sacred bond." He unwrapped the cloth to reveal a small, intricately carved wooden box. "This belonged to my father and his father before him. It survived war, flight, The refugee camp. Now I give it to you. Noah began to protest, but Mr. Ahmadi placed the box in his hands with gentle insistence. Not as payment. Such things cannot be purchased. As recognition, as connection. The box was warm from Mr. Ahmadi's pocket, its surface worn smooth by generations of handling. Noah's fingers traced the delicate patterns carved into the wood, finding unexpected parallels to his grandfather's cross, both objects shaped by devotion and sustained through loss. Later, after the Ahmadis had departed, Noah sat on his bed examining the wooden box by the light of his desk lamp. His mother knocked softly before entering, sitting beside him with a sigh that spoke volumes about her exhaustion. "That was a remarkable man," she said, her voice thoughtful. "To have lost so much and still focus on gratitude and connection." Noah nodded, thinking of the dignity that had emanated from Mr. Ahmadi despite his circumstances, working as a convenience store clerk when he had once been a respected professor in his homeland, living in subsidized housing after owning a family home for generations. "I don't understand why the kids at school can't see Rafi the way his father sees him," Noah said, frustration edging his voice. "They look at his clothes or hear his accent and decide he's nothing." His mother was quiet for a long moment, her hand finding his in the dim light. "People fear what they don't understand, Noah. And sometimes it's easier to mock than to make the effort to understand." The wall clock's irregular ticking filled the silence between them, a reminder of imperfection made familiar through acceptance. Noah's fingers closed around the wooden box, its solidity reassuring. "Your grandfather would be proud of you," his mother said finally, rising with the careful movements of someone conserving energy, "for seeing the person, not the circumstances." After she left, Noah retrieved his grandfather's cross from his pocket, placing it beside the wooden box on his nightstand. The two objects, one Christian, one from a Muslim tradition, seemed to speak to each other in the quiet room, a dialogue of craftsmanship and meaning that transcended their differences. The next day at school, the mockery continued, but something had shifted within Noah. Mr. Ahmadi's respect had rekindled a certainty that had begun to flicker under the onslaught of peer ridicule. Noah carried both the cross and the wooden box in his pockets, their weight a reminder of connections that ran deeper than social acceptance. During lunch period, Noah made his way to Rafi's isolated corner, sitting down without asking permission. They ate in companionable silence for several minutes before Rafi spoke. "My father says you have a good soul," he said simply. "This is rare in any country." Before Noah could respond, a commotion erupted at the cafeteria entrance. Garrett stumbled in, his usual swagger absent, his face pale beneath his carefully maintained tan. Madison hurried after him, her expression uncharacteristically concerned. "Garrett, you need to sit down," she was saying. "You're not okay." Garrett waved her off, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. He made it 3 more steps before collapsing to his knees, his breathing suddenly labored and irregular, a mirror image of Rafi's panic attack at the mall. The cafeteria fell silent, except for the steady ticking of the wall clock and Garrett's desperate gasps for air. Students froze in place, uncertainty paralyzing even the teachers present. Noah found himself moving before conscious thought intervened, crossing the room to kneel beside the boy who had caused him so much pain. "Garrett, you're having a panic attack," he said calmly, repeating the words and techniques he had used with Rafi. "Try to breathe with me, in through your nose, out through your mouth." Confusion and fear warred in Garrett's eyes as they locked onto Noah's face. For a suspended moment, the social hierarchy that had defined their interactions dissolved, leaving only 2 teenagers, one in crisis, one offering help. Gradually, Garrett's breathing steadied. As the immediate danger passed, embarrassment flooded his features, quickly replaced by defensive anger. "Get away from me, Sullivan," he hissed, his voice lacking its usual authority. "I don't need your charity." Noah stood and stepped back, giving Garrett space to reconstruct his facade of invulnerability. As he turned to return to his table, he found Raffi standing nearby, quiet witness to the scene. Together they walked away from the whispered conversations, already beginning to ripple through the cafeteria. "Why did you help him?" Raffi asked when they were out of earshot. "After what he did to us." Noah's hand went to his pocket, fingers finding both the cross and the box. "I don't know," he admitted. "It seemed like the only thing to do." The incident marked a subtle shift in the school's atmosphere. The videos continued to circulate, but with decreasing frequency and enthusiasm. Garrett avoided Noah in the hallways, his usual mockery replaced by an uncomfortable silence. Madison, surprisingly, approached Noah between classes 3 days later. "What happened to Garrett?" she began, then paused, searching for words. "His brother has anxiety attacks. Bad ones. Garrett's seen it before, but it never happened to him until that day." Noah waited, unsure where this confession was leading. Madison sighed, her customary poise slipping to reveal something more vulnerable beneath. "What I'm trying to say is, he understands now what happened to Raffi at the mall, and I guess I do too." It wasn't an apology, not quite, but it was an acknowledgement. Noah nodded, accepting the olive branch for what it was. As Madison walked away, he noticed the hallway clock's steady ticking seemed less oppressive than before. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Tanner announced a group project on cultural narratives, requiring pairs of students to interview each other about their family traditions and histories. Before she could assign partners, Garrett raised his hand. "Mrs. Tanner, I'd like to work with Raffi," he said, his voice carrying none of its usual arrogance. A murmur of surprise rippled through the classroom. "I think we might have more in common than I realized." The teacher's raised eyebrows indicated her own astonishment, but she nodded agreement. "Very well, Garrett. Raffi, are you comfortable with that arrangement?" Raffi glanced at Noah, who gave him a slight nod of encouragement. "Yes," Raffi answered, his voice steady. "I would like to share my culture with someone who wishes to understand." As the class broke into their assigned pairs, Noah found himself partnered with Tyler, who approached with visible discomfort. "Look, man," Tyler began awkwardly, "about the videos and stuff. We were just messing around. We didn't mean—" "It's okay," Noah interrupted, though they both knew it wasn't, not entirely, but perhaps it could be eventually. "Let's just focus on the project." That afternoon, Noah walked home instead of taking the bus, needing the time to process the day's unexpected developments. The autumn air carried a hint of approaching winter, crisp and clarifying. His hand found its way to his pocket, fingers closing around his grandfather's cross. The wooden artifact felt different somehow, not worn down but worn in, shaped by experience rather than diminished by it. As he approached his apartment building, Noah spotted Raffi waiting on the front steps, the oversized coat now looking less like an ill-fitting charity and more like a deliberate style choice, worn with new confidence. "My father asked if you would join us for dinner," Raffi said by way of greeting. "He is making my grandmother's recipe for Kabuli pulao." The invitation was unexpected, but welcome. Noah texted his mother, who was working the evening shift, then followed Raffi to the small apartment his family had been assigned through the refugee resettlement program. The space was similar to Noah's own home in size and basic amenities, but the Ahmadis had transformed it through small, meaningful touches. Hand-woven textiles draped over standard-issue furniture, framed calligraphy on the walls, the enticing aroma of spices that made Noah's stomach growl in anticipation. Mr. Ahmadi welcomed them with formal courtesy, inviting Noah to sit at a low table while he completed the dinner preparations. Raffi's younger sister, Layla, watched shyly from a doorway, her dark eyes curious but cautious. "In Afghanistan, sharing a meal is more than sustenance," Mr. Ahmadi explained as he served steaming portions of fragrant rice topped with tender lamb, carrots, and raisins. "It is acknowledgement that we all hunger for the same things: nourishment, connection, understanding." The meal was unlike anything Noah had experienced, flavors both foreign and immediately appealing. As they ate, Mr. Ahmadi shared stories of his homeland, not just the conflict that had ultimately driven them to seek refuge in America, but the beauty of the mountains at dawn, the wisdom passed through generations, the resilience of people who had endured successive waves of hardship. "My father believed that suffering either closes the heart or opens it," Mr. Ahmadi said, his expression thoughtful. "The choice belongs to each person." The clock on the Ahmadi's wall ticked with a rhythm different from the ones at school or in Noah's apartment, yet somehow harmonious with them, different instruments playing the same melody. Noah thought of Garrett's unexpected vulnerability, of Madison's halting acknowledgement, of Tyler's awkward attempt at apology. Hearts beginning, perhaps, to open rather than close. After dinner, Raffi walked Noah partway home, their breath visible in the cooling evening air. They had nearly reached Noah's building when Raffi spoke. "Tomorrow I am meeting with Garrett to work on our project," he said, his tone neutral. "He asked many questions today, real questions, not to mock." Noah nodded, understanding the significance. "People can change," he said, thinking of his grandfather's teachings about redemption and second chances. Raffi considered this. "In my culture, we say that the heart is like a house with many rooms. Sometimes a person must visit the darkest room before they can appreciate the ones filled with light." The image resonated with Noah, who thought of the wooden cross and box nestled together in his pocket, artifacts of different traditions speaking a common language of meaning. He pulled out the cross, the carved wood catching the glow of a nearby streetlight. "My grandfather made this," Noah said, offering it to Raffi. "He said it reminded him that love is always stronger than hate, even when it doesn't feel that way." Raffi studied the simple object, his expression solemn. "This is important to you. I cannot take it." "Not to keep," Noah clarified. "Just to hold on to for tomorrow when you talk with Garrett. A reminder that you're not alone, even when I'm not there." After a moment's hesitation, Raffi accepted the cross, carefully tucking it into his coat pocket. "Thank you, my friend. I will return it safely." The following day unfolded with a new rhythm, the school clocks ticking in what seemed a more benevolent cadence. Noah observed from a distance as Raffi and Garrett sat together in the library during study period, their conversation intense but not hostile. Raffi's hand occasionally went to his pocket, where Noah knew his grandfather's cross rested. By the end of the week, a subtle but significant reorganization had occurred in Westridge Academy's social landscape. The mockery had largely subsided, replaced by a tentative respect. Garrett and his friends didn't suddenly become champions of inclusion, but the deliberate cruelty had been replaced by something approaching tolerance. During Mrs. Tanner's class presentation day, Noah watched as Garrett and Raffi stood together before their classmates, sharing the cultural narrative they had created. Garrett spoke with unexpected eloquence about the parallels between his own family's immigration 3 generations ago and Raffi's more recent journey. "We think we're so different," Garrett concluded, "but scratch the surface and you find the same hopes, the same fears, just expressed through different traditions." As they returned to their seats, Raffi discreetly passed something to Garrett, a small object that Noah recognized immediately. Garrett examined the wooden cross for a moment before carefully placing it in his pocket, nodding once to Raffi in acknowledgement. After class, Raffi approached Noah in the hallway, his expression peaceful. "I hope you do not mind," he said quietly. "Garrett asked about the cross, and I told him where it came from. He needed it more than either of us today." Noah was surprised to find that he wasn't upset. Somehow, the sharing of his grandfather's artifact felt right, a widening circle of connection rather than a loss. "It's okay," he assured Raffi. "That's what it's meant for." The weeks that followed brought gradual changes. Westridge Academy remained a place where social hierarchies mattered, where wealth and status carried weight. But the rigid boundaries had softened. Noah still wore second-hand clothes and carried a repaired backpack. Rafi still spoke with an accent and brought unfamiliar food for lunch. Garrett still drove an expensive car and lived in the prestigious North Side neighborhood. But these differences had ceased to be the entirety of their identities. At Christmas break, Garrett approached Noah in the parking lot after the last day of classes. His expression was uncharacteristically hesitant as he held out a small object. "I wanted to return this," he said, offering Noah's grandfather's cross. It helped when I didn't expect it to." Noah accepted the wooden carving, noting the additional wear on its surfaces. New fingers had traced its contours, finding comfort in its simplicity. "I'm glad," he said simply. Garrett nodded, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "My parents are hosting this charity thing for the refugee resettlement program over the break. Nothing major, just a dinner and silent auction." He paused, then added in a rush, "Rafi's family will be there, and it'd be cool if you came too." The invitation hung between them, imperfect but genuine. Noah thought of Mr. Ahmadi's words about hearts opening or closing in response to suffering. "I'd like that," he said. "Thanks." The school clock tower chimed the hour as they parted ways, the sound carrying across the Winter campus. Noah walked toward the bus stop, his hand in his pocket, where the wooden cross had been reunited with Mr. Ahmadi's carved box. The two artifacts nestled together, different yet complementary, like the various rhythms of the clocks that had marked time throughout his journey. The steady ticking at school, the slightly irregular beat in his apartment, the foreign yet harmonious tempo in the Ahmadi home. Spring semester would bring new challenges, new opportunities for both kindness and cruelty. The social landscape of Westridge Academy hadn't been miraculously transformed, and Noah harbored no illusions that all prejudice and mockery had been permanently banished. But something had shifted, a small recalibration with rippling effects. As Noah boarded the bus home, he spotted a new student waiting uncertainly at the school entrance, a girl with the distinctive look of recent arrival, her clothes marking her as clearly as Rafi's oversized coat had marked him. Without hesitation, Noah pulled the stop request cord and stepped back onto the pavement. "Hi," he said, approaching with a smile. "You look a little lost. Can I help?" In his pocket, the wooden cross and carved box rested side by side, tokens of different faiths united in the simple practice of seeing the person, not the circumstances. The school clock tower chimed the quarter hour, its sound no longer a reminder of isolation but a call to connection. Time passing, hearts opening, one small choice at a time.